All right. What is up, everybody? Good to have you on our little chat, and I hope you're doing well. Uh, where are some of you from? Let's hear from you. What locale? Yes.
From all over.
Yes.
Yay. So
Well,
happy.
we can wait a few minutes for it to feed in. Tim is on the other side. And Tim, do we have any people yet?
Yes, we have 13 people currently viewing. So hello, 13 of you. Oh, there we go. We got
There we go.
There we go. Okay. All right.
Canada. We got some folks from Canada coming in here.
Good deal.
Oh, there we go. Maryland, Texas, Scotland. Wow.
Oh, good deal. Yes, love to see where you all are from.
No, Jorge Gil's on.
Jorge.
Gil, what is up? How you doing, bro? Well, good. We're thankful to see you guys jumping on and the screen feed filling up. Listen, my wife and I, we're happy to be with you. I'm Bobby. This is my wife, Heather.
I'm Heather.
That's
yeah,
right.
We're trying to fix this screen.
Yes.
So we're give us a minute here. There we go. Maybe this is better, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like that little whiteboard in it, though. So can we...
Okay, the marriage talk's going great because I want it this way. I'm just
Okay.
kidding.
Well, okay. Well, where we are right now is Heather came up to join me at the office where K-Wave is, and that's where I do the radio program. So I just came off of live radio call-in program that I do, and I came right around the corner into the office to do this with you guys. So anyway, I love seeing some of the different places. It always excites us to see, we got El Salvador, Central America. I see South Africa, Tasmania, Scotland, Alaska, South Africa, Indiana. Yes, New York City, SoCal. All right. Daniel Bertino, what's up? Some Texas. I was just in Texas a few weeks ago and did a conference. Actually, I think I was there last week doing a conference. So it's good to have you guys on. What my wife and I thought we would do today is just kind of take some time to talk about marriage. If there's anything that Heather and I have experienced in our own relationship is that marriage can be challenging. Mm-hmm. And as we talk as a couple who's now been married for 23 years and we dated for a few years before we got married, and we think about just some of the shifts that have taken place in our culture, in particular in the Western hemisphere. We've seen lots of transformation take place, and that has affected couples. Here where we live in the United States, marriage, the whole, definition of marriage has changed, right? You can have marriage between a man and a man or a woman and a woman. When we got married, it was pretty clear, right? The culture shared the values of the church, that marriage was meant to be between a man and a woman. Some of your Gen Z and your Gen Y, your millennial generation, they're getting married later and later. They've come from homes that have been broken, and they have asked themselves, is it really worth getting married? Like, do I want to enter into a marriage relationship when I see the relationships fall apart? We see divorce parties now that are celebrated. When people get a divorce, they throw a party about it, getting freed up. And so I think one of the things that is a burden to us as a couple is we need inside the church. That needs to be the place where when marriage gets tough, we are there to remind each other, don't throw in the towel. Because everybody in the world is going to be saying, throw in the towel, give it up. If you're not happy, move on. And the truth of the matter is marriage is going to go through a lot of different seasons. And it's going to have its ups. It's going to have its downs. You're going to feel great. You're going to feel miserable. And if we throw in the towel every time we're miserable, we're going to have a good statistic on divorce. Everyone is going to get divorced. And so I just want to know that there are voices that are out there that are going to say, hey, hang in there. You can do it. God can pull you through. And so what we're going to talk to you guys about today is just how to have a godly marriage in an ungodly culture. And we're going to be vulnerable from our own hearts. And so by means of introduction, hon, what else would you want to just kind of banter about with the crowd as people are kind of filling up here? to listen?
Well, first of all, excited to be here. Second time going live with Hubs. So I'm just excited to be on the program today. And just talk about marriage. We've been married 23 years. It has not been an easy 23 years. It has been.
Come on.
He's not easy to be married to. You know what I'm saying? No, but it hasn't always been rosy for us. It's actually been a very difficult thing, and marriage is hard work. So for Bobby and I, what we hope to do, not only here, but just if we speak, whatever we do, we want to share hope. Hope to this culture who really needs that. And, Bobby and I, we've had to fight really, really hard for our oneness. It has not come easy. And, honestly, we're not a perfect couple. So if you're tuning in like, hey, I bet Bobby and Heather got some amazing things to share. They got it going on. So if you think that you're going to get the perfect answers from us, then this probably isn't the right YouTube live. But if you want to stay with us and you want to see what it's like to face the realities of marriage and the perseverance and the grit and the resilience and what it means to really fight for that oneness, then please stay around, because we hope that we can encourage you and just share some of our own struggles and how we have tried to fight to win that oneness over the years. And marriage is really God's idea anyway. He's the one that created it, and so we want him to be at the center of it. And for Bobby and I, if we didn't have God at the center of our marriage, we would 100% be divorced. I mean, we just would be, right?
Thanks, babe. I appreciate that. So, hey.
But I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we model what it's like to have a Christian marriage, because without God there, we would have thrown in the towel a lot of times, because we would be going on our own strength and our own hope and our own perseverance. But we haven't done that. And we've really given that our marriage to God. And really that's how he gets the grace anyway, or gets the glory anyway.
Yeah. Like when Heather and I met 25 years ago, we were both freshly saved as Christians. And we were so excited about what we shared as it related to a common belief that Jesus is the one who came and died on a cross and rose from the grave for our sins. But every couple comes together and they bring the baggage of their past with them. And so for Heather and I, we were raised in different contexts. I grew up in California. She grew up in Arkansas, so she's my Southern girl.
I'm a country girl.
I'm the guy that's growing up out here in Cali, using words like dude, cool, bro, stoked. And when we met, that was exciting. I loved kind of like meeting a non-California girl, right? Because that's where I was from. Meeting myself a little Southern girl, and
and I had my surfer dude.
Yes, and so she got to meet.
Although
me.
he wasn't a surfer.
Yeah. At the time, but I was out surfing today with my son, so been enjoying that. But all that to say, when you think about your marriage and you come together, you're bringing all that baggage together. How you communicate, the pain, the traumas, and all of that will come into how it is that you experience oneness. And so my wife and I both did conferences together for almost 10 years called Family Life. And for those of you that are from other countries, this is a really significant ministry here in the United States. They're called Weekend to Remembers. It's the largest kind of traveling marriage conference that has been going on for years now. And we would travel to large hotels and we would have conference rooms that would have several hundred people, and we would coach couples. And we did this for almost 10 years. Yeah. And, we would try to lay out a way for people to have a marriage that could help them to experience oneness. But one of the things that we want to share right now is there is no secret sauce that we can just give you, because we all need some customizable wisdom as it relates to our own unique context and how it is that we can have a marriage that thrive. And so what is the statement we used to talk about? You're either growing toward what or what in our relationship.
Yeah. So the number one thing we would always share in our conferences, and this is a really true statement, is you're either growing closer in your marriage, if you have a spectrum, right? You're either growing closer in oneness or you're isolating. So you're either drifting apart or you're moving toward each other. And what we are always trying to teach people is there really is no middle ground there. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm just riding the fence. Because when you think about it, you can't just ride the fence. You got to tip one way or the other. So are you moving closer to your spouse or are you going apart? And in this world, when everything is tugging at us, it's so easy to drift apart. So it's really a daily practice of trying to foster that oneness. And as anyone watching knows how hard that can be.
Yeah. And so as we begin to think about what are some of the secret sauce, so to speak, to having, a godly marriage in an ungodly culture, let's just walk through some applicable statements that might help them. What would be something you'd share?
Well, the first secret sauce, there is a secret sauce, and the secret sauce is Jesus, and the secret sauce is God. The answer is always Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But really, I love the verse Psalm 127:1. That, unless the Lord builds the house, those who labor in vain. So I just want to build my marriage. I want us to build our marriage. I want whoever's watching to build their marriage on the foundation of Christ, because that's how you have a godly marriage in a godless culture. So just having that firm foundation, that's the secret sauce before we jump into like the practical tidbits. Because if you don't have that, then you're in deep trouble, right? And, marriage is it's a great example of Christ in the church, right? It's the greatest example of Christ in the church. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to water that picture down. I want to really show what it's like to have that thriving marriage, yes, a struggling marriage at times. Yes, we have to persevere and fight for it, but I don't want to water that down, because that's a great hope for people, right? The gospel. And so we have that. You have that if you're married. That's a privilege to be able to put out there. So that's kind of the secret sauce. But getting into more practical things.
And as you're turning to, talk about this different subject matter, I would want to say, sometimes we see as Christians that people, they don't even know the Lord, but they have this great relationship, right? And then you see Christians sometimes, like Heather and I have felt that sometimes, like, wow, here we are, we're just struggling and we're putting all this spiritual effort in. And then you look and you see somebody in the world and it's like they've got this great friendship and they're connecting just fine. What's going on there? Well, we're not refuting the fact that people can have a good friendship. It doesn't take being a believer to have a great friendship, but to have a God-centered marriage where our moral compass is informed by Scripture, where we desire to have Great Commission marriages, where we want to spread the gospel. And there's something that can be beautiful, like in a Christian marriage. There's that dying, that Ephesians 5 picture that you're talking about, where Christ loved the church. Ephesians 5:21, where it talks about submitting to one another, there is this mutual submission. But then you see this verse that comes to trigger, right? Okay, and now wives submitting to their husbands. We go, what are we doing here? The S word.
The S word.
Right? The S word. And but then it gives this directive about guys, right? Love your wives as Christ does the church. Well, how did Christ love the church? He died for it. So as I'd often share, submit or die, right? I mean, so dying is submission. It's laying your life down. It's dying is ultimate submission that you do for your spouse. And so that's
ladies, we have it easy, I guess, right? They got to die for us.
we got to die. So, I mean, that's like the ultimate, like submitting of our life, right? So like my wife's like, give it to me, I'm worth it, right? She's kind of singing away. So anyway, as we said that, jump on in and like, let's just share some practical points.
Yeah. So, we were just kind of jotting down and kind of talking through, what every marriage needs. And really, if you want to have that thriving marriage, one of the first things you have to do is you have to give it attention, right? Anything that's going to thrive has to be given adequate attention. I was kind of thinking through that. I'm like, that is so true. Because, I can sit here and say, I want 6-pack abs. That's what I want. I want that. But if I'm sitting on my couch and I'm eating tacos and queso, although that sounds pretty good right now.
That does sound pretty good, right? Awesome.
But if I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm just, throwing down the ice cream and the pizza and everything else. And I'm like, well, looking down, like, where are my abs? Like, where'd they go? They're hidden under a lot of fluff, is where they are, because if you're not, if you're eating the tacos and the queso, they're not going to pop up. So it's kind of that with your marriage, right? You have to give it adequate attention. You have to put in the work. You have to invest in each other. And attention really is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your spouse, right? When you really think about it, we have time. We have so much time in a day. So if you're giving that attention to your spouse, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. Because if you're investing and you're listening and you're like, how can I serve him better? What does he need today? I'm kind of reaping what I want. I'm putting that in, and it's going to come back to me through his leadership, through his love to me. And it's going to come back tomorrow, the next day, years to come, because I'm giving it what it needs, which is adequate attention, adequate watering.
Yeah, I think about like this weekend, over the past weekend, I hadn't given much attention to some of the
Weeds.
backyard, to some of the weeds, right? And if you don't stay on top of that, you know how it goes, the weeds begin to grow. And that is to say that you've got to constantly keep an eye out on that. In our marriages, if we don't keep an eye out, we've got to fight for that oneness. We've got to fight to make sure that we're staying connected. We have to be attentive, right? Like we think about how, I think about how much I've thought about myself already. For example, today, I woke up in the morning, had myself a nice cup of coffee, a protein bar, went out surfing for about an hour and a half, got home, gave myself a shower, had myself a little snack, a little something to eat, came up, got on the radio, right? And I think about, am I considering my wife's needs, right? I've dressed myself already today.
Yeah.
I've brushed my teeth today already. I've brushed my hair. I've taken care of myself. So in the same way, we're trying to be attentive.
He didn't make me breakfast or anything. Like, come on.
I did make Dawson, our son, some bacon and eggs and hash browns yesterday. It was money, right?
Yeah.
Crushing it.
Yeah.
I burnt the bacon though. It's kind of unfortunate.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You can't ruin bacon, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Bacon's always
I made
good.
you a pizza last night.
Yeah, that's right. And that made me feel really, really, really loved. So
That's right. That's right. So you guys, look at this. Check it out. It's happening.
It's happening. The oneness is happening. You're watching the oneness. No, but we really do. We have to just realize that everything in this world wants our attention. So we want to give ourselves attention, right? Like what Bobby was saying, but everything else wants our attention too. We have kids that need our attention. We have jobs that need our attention. We have TV, we have Netflix that want our attention. I have lots of things on DVR that want my attention, and I need to watch those things because they're important to me. Our phones, they need our attention. And for the love of God, we got to put these things down. We need to put them down and focus on each other.
Yeah.
And give that gift of attention, because if you're not intentional about it, it just simply won't happen. And before you know it, you're going to wake up and you're going to be so isolated and you're not going to really know what to do. You're going to feel pretty helpless. So just making that small step of giving each other that attention. And I think some practical tips that we have tried to do throughout the years is just, the first one would be date night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went years where we had a weekly date night. And depending upon where you are, and like if you're newlywed and you don't have any kids yet, you're going to be able to get those weekly dates, no problem, right? But then what ends up happening is you start having kids, and then the kids get busy. Like, we've got a 19-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter. Haley is about to be 21. And so at this stage, we can date again. We can date as much as we want to date. But during their high school season, middle school season, they've got sports and they've got all kinds of stuff. And it's really easy, if we're not careful, to get sucked into child-centered parenting where we quit focusing on each other. And, we would have been guilty of that at times, from going from weekly date nights to having a hard time getting those date nights in. Once we got the kids down for bed, we were just so exhausted. And, just the whole bedtime was a massive process. So I think dating is huge, and it doesn't have to be extravagant, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's really just, dating is just basically what you're trying to do is just spend quality time with each other.
Yeah.
And I just think in order for that to happen, you just got to calendar it. It just, guard it, protect it, and don't cancel it. And it's so easy to do. I know that can be easier said than done when you do have kids' sports and homework and, you work full time or whatever it is, but you really do have to calendar it and keep it on the calendar, just like you would a doctor's appointment,
Yeah.
or ladies, a hair appointment. Like for me, I'm not canceling my hair appointment. I mean, it's not happening. Like I'm going to keep it. If I have a dentist appointment, I'm going to go because I don't want to disappoint the doctor. I don't want my hair. I got to get the grays covered. There's things to do. So just like we take care of ourselves and we go to the dentist, we go to the doctor, we need to also date. And it just needs to be on the calendar. So my advice would just be, try to find that weekly date night. If not, then try to sit down and do it. If you know you're going to have a busy month, just say maybe you can do a lunch date. Maybe you can do a coffee date. Whatever it is, the point is to connect and talk and to show each other that you are each other's priority.
Yeah, and give yourself permission on date night to not talk about taboo subjects. Like when you go out on a date, we have seen so many date nights go sideways because we start talking about the budget or something that's really tense to us. So sometimes a good thing to do is, yes, attention. If we've got some underlying conflict or things that need attention, set aside a time. Like we used to talk about having a weekly share the beef night. All right. So you just reserve it where there's an outlet and you just say, okay, maybe Sunday night, at 6:00, we're going to talk about the past week. How did the week go? Where did we kind of blow it? What do we got ahead? How do we kind of align our schedules? Let's pray about the week together. That could be something that you do, so to speak. And then when you go out on that date night, you just kind of commit together that, this is kind of a trigger to talk about, this subject right now. Let's not go there. But ideally, you're able to set aside a time before the date night to get rid of whatever that trigger might be. But sometimes things just trigger us for the long term. Like it just takes time to heal, and you can't just avoid dates until you're fully healed up. So what else would you say?
We've had many date nights spiral.
Yes.
because
look here.
Oh, what do we have?
I see Tim's showing you guys. Tim's on the other side of North Carolina. He's the executive producer at 1 Minute Apologist. And so it looks like he's just throwing up a special deal for tonight. But our motto at 1 Minute Apologist is credible answers to curious questions. And so if you want, just go ahead and you can see where you go to Teespring. Tim, is there a link that they click on, bro? Or do they just click on that bad boy right there? So yeah, just click on that. I'm sure.
That's a really cool sweatshirt. I need that. Why do I not have that in my arsenal? I need that.
Yes.
So date. I think another thing that we can do is spend quality time doing something fun and meaningful together. Just play together, right? Have fun together. I don't think that's always easy to do, especially when you're wired really differently, but you can get creative. I mean, there's so many things you can do to connect.
Like
right?
I love to dance, and it's like one of the things that's
his favorite
really
thing to do. You should see him bust a move. Yeah.
You love to dance.
I do.
And
I love to
dancer.
dance. I feel music. Well, thank you.
Yes, you're a good dancer.
I do. It's finding those common things that you can do. And that honestly has been a challenge for us for many, many years. But I will say now that we do live here in Southern California, we have had more opportunities to find common things that we really do enjoy together. Just the beach alone is like amazing because if we can't agree on anything else, we will agree that the beach is our happy place.
Yeah.
So for us, it has really given us that opportunity we both love to be outdoors. We both love the beach. We love sunset. So we have found a new life, I guess, kind of connecting around just going to the beach.
Yeah. There was a season that I think what we did in our marriage, and it wasn't good, is we constantly allowed ourselves to be frustrated in our relationship with each other because she wasn't interested in what I was interested in, vice versa. And that could be challenging at times, right? Like, so I love to read philosophy and apologetics, and I love information.
And I'm like, oh, yeah.
Right. Well, but my wife's very gifted relationally. She she's just good with traditions in the home, making sure that we're connected and integrated. If it was left to me, I could have been totally detached. She used to say you should have just been a monk, right? Because I could just sit around and read and study. So what we had to do is we've had to figure out, okay, you know what, there's things that I love to do and there's things that she loves to do. And we have to give each other permission and space to do that. And so like one of the things I see us doing at nighttime is kind of before we go to bed, we each just kind of I have time to go listen to information and do my Audible stuff. And then she has some time to herself to watch some of the programs that she might enjoy watching or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the point here, honestly, is to just really play together, because when you create those new memories together, studies and science, I'm a science geek, and science has actually shown that when you quote unquote play together, do something fun together, create a new memory together, the joy bucket in our brain actually releases dopamine, and dopamine is a happy hormone that not only
I like dopamine.
I know. Dopamine's amazing. Sign me up for more dopamine.
Yeah.
So if you want more dopamine.
Y'all like dopamine?
Dopamine, yes. So what happens is our brain and our gut release that dopamine when we are finding joy with each other. So when we're playing and doing something fun, and we both have to find joy in it though. So, sometimes you have to sacrifice, and you may have to dance with me, or I may have to read a philosophy book. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about really finding that place where you overlap and you find that play place, because it's actually proven scientifically that when you play together and you're both having fun, that dopamine is released. And then what does that do? That brings together oneness. You're having that connectivity. You're feeling like you're building that trust, that security with each other. Mm-hmm. And it's such an easy thing to do. Just go have fun. The hardest thing, like what we were just saying, is finding where we overlap, because sometimes we don't, but you can always find something that you both enjoy.
We love to eat out.
I love food.
Fun,
we love
right?
food. We like to eat.
Yeah, we're foodies. So that's something, but just figure out those areas, but give each other freedom to not have to do everything together. No,
it's just to nurture that attention in your marriage, find that, and kind of think about it like, think about when you were first dating. When you were first dating, you always wanted to do something fun, right? You always, let's go do this. Let's go adventure here. Let's travel here. And what that was doing is you were building a community. You were building memories. You were building security and fondness with each other. And so I don't know what happens. I guess life just happens and we get comfortable with each other and we stop pursuing each other. But then that dies down once you say I do. And I think it takes there again that intentionality of dating, that intentionality of doing something fun that you both enjoy. Doesn't have to be every day, but just marking it down and putting it in the calendar. Yeah. And I think what you're saying about that with having this how things can kind of die down, that's so true. Like one of the elements that Heather and I've talked about before, I would describe it as a serious threat to our marriage, is boredom. And having fun can work against that. And look, when you're falling in love is exciting. Like Heather and I, we've talked, like I get like why, people go from one person to the next person to the next person, because it's exhilarating falling in love, right? You're totally interested in the person. You want to know everything about the person, where they live, what they love. There's so much learning happening, right? And it's exciting and it feels magical, so to speak, but it doesn't last with anybody. It just doesn't last. And it takes a maturity for us to realize that, yeah, you can go find that firsthand excitement, right? Like my wife could go out and find a guy, or I could go out and find a girl, or you could do the same thing, that it's going to feel exciting and exhilarating on the front end, but you're going to settle in, and that initial buzz is going to go away. And the key is in mature love
and I think that Heather's sharing, like, we got to have fun together, is because we will get bored. And what causes boredom over time is you start feeling like you've mastered each other. You start feeling like there's nothing really to learn. So how do we keep ourselves interesting to each other? Like, how can I be somebody that's not just a boring guy? And how can my wife not be boring, right? Well, she's crazy, so that helps on one level, right?
That's for sure.
And I am too. So we got
There's
a lot
no
of
way we're gonna get bored.
Yeah, we're not going to get bored. We have some cray going on in the Conway home, right? But I think that boredom, by constantly learning new skills, learning new hobbies together, this will keep conversation fresh. Reading a book together, anything you can do, adventure together, will protect that boredom piece. And that's why once people often raise their kids and they empty nest the kids, they end up divorced. Why? Because they're bored and they don't have anything to come together on to give them a sense of purpose.
It's so true. Yeah, actually, statistics are showing that like our age range is the highest divorce rate right now, even amongst Christians, because your whole season of life is changing. And for us women, like, we have our hormones involved, maybe we're perimenopausal, we've empty nested our kids, maybe we were finding too much identity in our kids, and we really didn't nurture and invest that marriage. And then we're just kind of like, what is life? Like, why am I feeling this way? And so if we're not being intentional and making it a priority and studying each other and combating that boredom, then we are in danger of that threat. So another thing I was thinking that I wrote down is we have to be thankful. We have to find gratitude and be thankful and show appreciation for each other.
Yeah, that's huge.
I think that's so huge. I mean, gratitude is a absolute game changer in anything, right? I mean, it really is. Mindset, the way that you approach your marriage. I mean, mindset for me in general, not just in marriage, but in just life in general, is been so critical for me, because I have always tended toward thinking that worst case scenario type mentality and approaching that. And when you put that negative out there, that's what you get back, and you want to breed that life and goodness into your marriage and approaching it from a positive standpoint, but really showing gratitude and appreciation for each other, I think, is so crucial.
Yeah, and it really is. I find it easy for me to just take you for granted, to be honest. Like, there's things like my wife's doing all the time, like cooking a wonderful meal, or she just remembered in her mind something that I mentioned that I wanted, and she picked it up at the store. And I think that just that as it relates to being attentive to how we can be grateful for each other, to not take each other for granted, to just having that awareness that we're working on oneness. We're together trying to build that sense of oneness can be really huge. And I find gratitude, for me, as somebody who can struggle with depression, that gratitude can help through in my own depression seasons that I can go through, but gratitude can help when our marriage feels depressed, right? Start getting thankful. I mean, your marriage is in a bad spot when you can't think of anything nice that you like about your spouse. And we've been there, right? Like, where it's like, you just kind of start thinking that, this person's not all that legit, right? and that's not a good spot to be in, right? Like,
he's never thought that of me.
Yeah, no. Right. But what do we say of family life, right? Your mate is not your.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Your mate is not your enemy.
Right.
We're not each other's enemy, but my goodness, how many times do we just look at each other and.
Yeah. Our battle's not against flesh and blood.
Right. And marriage is a gift. Like, he's a gift. And I have to say that there's been so many times where I'm like, I'm not seeing the big little red bow tied up all nice and neatly. Sometimes it's like, I don't look at him as a gift. I look at him as my enemy. And like, we're in battle against each other. And we really have to realize that that's how the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy our oneness, and to really combat that through gratitude and through thankfulness and through appreciation, and realizing that we're not each other's enemies, but that we are an actual gift to each other.
Yeah.
And that is not easy to do, but if you can do that, I think it just helps you so much.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, gratitude, you know, just right now, just kind of just stop and be grateful. We just look practically, just look like, you know, hey, I'm thankful that you've stuck with me through highs and lows in our marriage relationship. I'm thankful you took time to be here with me today to talk to the Woman Apologist YouTube audience, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm thankful that, you know, you have such a passion for our kids and you've been invested in them. You know, we just stop and just fill each other up, fill our love tanks up.
Yes, for sure.
So I think with our time, hon, let's just talk a little bit about communication, because here's the deal. Heather and I, we could talk to you guys all day long about this. I think we're going to talk a little bit about communication. So we talked about, you know, how important it is to be attentive to each other, how important it is for us to be grateful for each other. I want us to talk a little bit about communication, and then we're just going to see what kind of questions are popping up, and we're going to just interact with you as our audience. And then we can do more stuff on this in the future, because this is not an exhaustive list. We're just taking some important things for us to remember. And the reality is a lot of this stuff might not even be new to you. It's just reminding each other once again of how important it is, and just to know that, you know what, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. He can be with you in your marriage. But now, as it relates to communication, my goodness, this is one area I think that this has been honestly the most difficult part of our marriage at times, the communication. Heather's really struggled to just get it together, and it's caused
I'm a hot mess. Hot mess express right here, guys.
All right.
No, but seriously, communication, I mean, really, I think the health of your marriage can be almost determined by how well you communicate in good and in bad times. And, you know, it's an ongoing struggle for Bobby and I. It is something that it just doesn't come easy to us all the time. And, you know, if it comes easy to you, praise Jesus, thank him for that. For sure. Don't take it for granted. But for us, we have to really fight to communicate effectively through the years, and through 25 years now that we've been together, 23 years of married. I saw someone that asked how long we've been married, but 23 years. But something that we learned, I was going to talk about the VCR. You want to talk about that?
Well, let me give them an example about the jumping out of the car stuff.
Yeah.
You know, right? So like here,
that's much juicier.
Yeah, this is much juicier, but this is true. You can find the video on YouTube somewhere, like Bobby Conway, family life, jumps out of car. Heather and I were dating, right?
Wouldn't you like that to be associated with your name? Google.
Yeah. It's out there because they did a story on it for the marriage conferences, and we were dating early, and I was 21 when I met Heather. She was 20, and I was 6 months clean. So coming off of just my party lifestyle, met Heather, was taking her to, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with me. I was a hot mess, and I didn't know how to communicate well in my own home, right? I mean, I was constantly in arguments. And when it comes to conflict, you know, I like to say, you got the duke it out, the fake it out, the hide it out, the work it out. Heather and I have always been, let's just duke it out, right? You have others that fake it out. How you doing? Oh, I'm okay. But you know, they're just faking it out. Others are the hide it out, right? They just go and isolate from each other. What we want to do is want to work it out. Well, I didn't know how to communicate. And when I feel pressure and I feel pain, I want to escape. And so that's why I turned to alcohol. That's why I turned to drugs. And we were driving down Pacific Coast Highway here in Southern California back when we were dating, and we just got in some conflict, and I couldn't handle it. I just jumped out of a moving car and went rolling down the road. My shirt was torn up. My glasses broke. and people be thinking, what the heck, like this guy's
Yes.
unstable, right? And
We were dating.
and
I still married him.
and she's still, like she's mental, right? No, well, we're both mental, right? So that's crazy. Like, why did I do that? Well, I don't know. It's just like, sometimes it's just easier to jump out of a car than communicate. You see, that's the principle. That for me, it was just easier to jump out of a moving car than communicate. See, that's how poor of a communicator I was. I would say, forget it, I'm jumping out of a car. And so I would say, thank God we're not jumping out of cars anymore.
Yeah. That's what you call lack of coping skills.
And getting hijacked, right? I didn't know how to cope, didn't know how to feel.
Gosh.
And so all that to say, maybe some of that stuff happens in your relationship. Now, I did see a statement where someone says, what do you mean by brain chemistry? And as you're going to start talking about VCR, that might be a good thing as Anteater 23, as we talk about the VCR method.
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of counseling. I think counseling is a great avenue to help people. Christian counseling, obviously, all truth comes from God ultimately. But sometimes you just need that third party to help you work through things. And we learned something in counseling many years ago, and it's called a VCR. And the V, just VCR, the V stands for validate, and the C is comfort, and the R is redirect.
Yeah.
So in practical terms, basically what that's saying is don't try to comfort someone without first validating them. So in fleshing that out, like if I'm struggling and I'm upset and I'm coming to Bobby and I'm upset about something and he can see that I'm upset, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm, big emotions. And then he's just like, oh, hon, it's okay. It's going to be fine. And he starts throwing solutions at me. Then all I'm doing is I'm super hijacked in that moment because he didn't validate me, right? I needed to be validated. I needed him to basically say, hey, hon, I see that you're overwhelmed right now. I see that you're hurting. You're angry, and really validating your spouse. And then obviously give that comfort and tell them it's going to be okay. Say, what can I do? Maybe we need to go on a walk. Do we need to go on a date? What can I do to help ease that big emotion so that you feel better in this moment, so that you feel seen and heard and validated? And then the R is you redirect it. You get back on track. Basically, your brain chemistry and your relational brain is back on track. So that's kind of what we mean. It's like you're hijacked, you need to be validated, you need to be comforted, and then you can redirect it. So practically speaking, that's what you want to do when you're arguing. And conflict resolution is you want to always, always, always validate what they're feeling. Doesn't mean you have to agree. There's a big difference between validating and agreeing, because I think I used to get so hung up on that. I'm like, I cannot validate this because I don't agree with you. But those are two totally different things. You can validate someone and not agree with them. And then maybe once that person.
What does that look like though, to validate someone that you don't agree with?
Yeah, just acknowledging what they are feeling. Like, I can see that you're angry right now. I can see that you're hurting right now. I can see that you're in a lot of pain, that this is causing you a lot of anxiety. And that brings soothingness to people's heart when you get validated. And I think marriages, so many people out there are in that tug of war. And they just want validation. They want to be seen, heard, and validated. And then maybe they can receive that comfort.
Yeah.
And I don't think we still don't do that perfectly, but I think just having those tools helps to just remember, VCR, what do I need to do right now to validate Bobby? What do I need to do right now to first make sure he's seen and heard, and then give him comfort, and then offer some solution? Because when we're only given solutions, that's us operating strictly in our left brain. We're not thinking with our emotions at all. And when you're validating, you want to think with your right brain. That's where your emotion center is. And so you really want to validate with your right brain, then offer the solutions, and then redirect and get back on track. And then you're kind of restoring that oneness.
Yeah, this VCR was incredibly helpful to me, because what ends up happening is we can get in a rut where we get in these bad patterns where we get triggered, and there's some like PTSD, right? We were triggered by certain things that have happened with one another, the way, and see, some people, if you're more left brain, like, the logical, the orderly, and you just kind of stay in that spot, not a high feeler, real even keeled, there's a lot of blessing that can come with that because you're not turbulent. Both Heather and I have a lot of right brain as well. So that's that creative, that artsy, we're feeling our environment all the time. We're just constantly trying to feel things out. So we're high feelers, right? And I'm also highly analytical. So what ends up happening is that can create, like, it makes it hard to find just this even chemistry relationally at times, right? Like reading off of each other. Is this kind of this time of the month for my bride, or have I had a rough day? And when you're really even keeled and you come together kind of with another left brain meets left brain, the marriage can be like almost like math, right? It works a little bit easier. It's more formulaic. There's less turbulence, but it can also mean that you could struggle being empathetic and sympathetic toward people that kind of are more up and down. And so if you're aware that if you got a lot of that right brain, that kind of that emotional turbulence that can happen, it can be helpful to realize that when your amygdala gets hijacked, right, you think fight or flight when that amygdala gets hijacked. And well, it gets hijacked in places of unprocessed trauma. So there are places where we have trauma in our life. And so, like, let's say you're in a marriage where there's been an affair in the past, or let's say you're in a marriage where your spouse hit you, or let's say you're in a marriage where your spouse yelled at you in a certain way. Well, when you get put in those similar situations, that unprocessed trauma can cause your amygdala to get hijacked and you think fight or flight, right? And so this is where we got to slow down. And if we're going to heal, Heather's nailing the ball right on the head. It's that VCR. How do we validate? And one thing, like for me, I can get like intense. I'm not a big yeller type. Not that I've never yelled, but that's not like my vibe, but I can get intense and I don't even realize it because I just got a passionate personality, and she has to just tell me to calm down. You're getting worked up, and just take a deep breath and just slow down, speak softly, right? Because like sometimes like we can't hear each other because we're looking at the way we're saying things. And so soften the eyes when we're talking, speak in a softer tone, look to drop each other's guards. It's just crazy. Like sometimes wanting to get my point across so much, I've failed to validate you many times. And honestly, it's kind of dumb. Because it's like wisdom would just get us out of this a whole lot sooner, right? Like,
if we can just get back into our rational brain so often, you can get yourself out of an argument really quick. But we choose to stay. I don't think we choose to stay, but like Bobby's saying, we just get hijacked. We get triggered in our pain and our trauma, and we get stuck in that tug of war. And why we do that is because we want to win, or we kind of we don't want them to win, or we want to hurt each other, or we're trying to avoid guilt or shame. There's so many reasons we do what we do, and it's usually out of our own pain. And we all have pain. Every single one of us has pain. It's how we deal with it, and what we do, the coping mechanisms to do with it. And a good statement that our counselor told us back in the day is this is really, really good, is to keep the relationship bigger than the problem.
That's such a good statement.
I mean, that right there is so good. Keep the relationship bigger than the problem. And that goes to parenting too. Because so often we're focused on that problem. Like, you're not hearing me, or we're talking about money, and it's like, we're not budgeting well, or you're not doing this well. And we're attacking each other when in reality, we are on the same team, and we just need to keep that relationship forefront. And if we can remember that we're on the same team, we're in the same boat, right? So if we're in the same boat, it doesn't matter if I win or if he wins, because we're both going down in a boat. It's going to sink if only one of us wins. So we need to visualize ourselves in that boat together on the same team, fighting for each other and keeping that relationship at the forefront. And then the problems become smaller and smaller, and you can attack it together.
Yeah. So these are just some simple tips as it relates to communication that I hope can help you. And I would say that my wife and I have been blessed by Jim Wilder and some of his stuff. And he has this acrostic, doesn't he, honey, called Rare. Why don't you share some of that, what that looks like, and then we'll go and take some questions, because I do think that that would be just a helpful tool with the VCR.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So I'm realizing that it's already 49 minutes. See, when you're talking about marriage, there's just, you can go on and on and on.
Yeah, there is.
We haven't even talked about sex yet. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
Sex or forgiveness, all that. So stay tuned. We'll do another one
That's right.
on intimacy. But yeah, the rare thing. So another acrostic, RARE. And this is kind of in regards to when you're attacking in conflict resolution. So the R is remain relational. So kind of like what I just said, keeping the relationship bigger than the problem. So remain relational. Don't make it about each other. Keep it on the problem. The A is act like yourself. And when I first heard that, I'm like, what does that mean? Act like yourself. It just kind of sounds bizarre and random. But really what that means is get back into your rational brain. And because what we do is we get hijacked, right? We get hijacked if he says something that triggers me. And then I start getting irrational. Maybe I start yelling, I start saying things I don't really mean. And then what am I doing in that moment? I'm really not acting like myself, because the true Heather, the true Bobby wouldn't be doing that. But because I'm not acting
and
like
myself. And by true, meaning like when we're operating as a godly Christian.
Yes, the heart that God gave us. You know what I mean? Because my true self isn't like that. I mean, I don't like to think it is. My true self is, it's godly. It wants to please. I want to be a good wife and a good mom. And
all of you apologetically minded people, she's referring definitely to like the new identity in Christ, right? Like,
Yeah. I'm not the apologist in the couple.
No. Yeah. But I could see some people going, well, we all, acting like ourselves, our heart's desperately wicked, right? Well, but her point
acting
is totally
like the
well
self
taken.
that my sanctified godly self that God
wants me to be. Yep.
Yeah. The living from the heart that Jesus gave me. That's the name of a book that he wrote. Wilder, I think it's called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave Me. So act like yourself, meaning
that's good.
And not acting irrational, because that's what we do. We act irrational. We don't remain relational. And so that's the R, remain relational, act like yourself. The next R is return to joy. There again, that sounds kind of abstract. What does that really mean to return to joy? But it's just kind of getting those relational circuits back to where they need to be, not pinging off in anger, pinging off in whatever, but just returning back to that joy and that sound mind. And then the E is endure suffering. And I think that's such a good one. And when I think about that acrostic, because it basically enduring suffering, I mean, what does that say? I mean, we're all going to go through hard things. There's no way we're going to live this side of heaven and not have trials and tribulations. And so we have to learn how to go through those trials and endure those trials in a godly way and not just fly off the handle. So if you can remember to just endure those and just go, in this world, you're going to have trouble, but take heart because God's overcome the world, and to learn to expect the unexpected. I think sometimes we just think we're going to have heaven on earth. Like we're just like, oh, something bad happened. And it's like, no, we just need to realize that bad things are going to happen. We are going to have bad days. We're going to go through trials, but we have to endure that and submit that to God. And I think it'll really help us to stay calm-minded and not live in that triggered and trauma state of mind.
Such good words. I mean, seriously. And I forgot about that statement that our counselor years ago mentioned to us. That was good. I feel like when it comes to this marriage, many people end up disillusioned, right? Because they go into marriage with this vision of what they think it's going to be, but then reality hits. Ruth Graham, the late wife of Billy Graham, said, go into marriage with your eyes wide open, remain married with your eyes half shut. I think most people go into marriage with their eyes half shut, and then they say, I do. And then over time, their eyes open wide, and I think, my God, what did I do? Right? It's going to be hard at times. Whoever promised us that marriage would be easy, it's going to be difficult. And sure, you can go find some excitement in the early stages of any relationship, but you'll also cause a ton of pain and a ton of hurt And eventually, no matter who it is, you're just going to get used to somebody, right? Like we get used to things. We get used to a beautiful view. We get used to, that's why we always want more. And, the more is going to come ultimately with heaven. The last thing I would say would just be forgive. Because when we suffer, when we communicate, we're going to need to forgive. So think about it like this. If our purpose as Christians in godly marriage is we are to model a Christian marriage, that means we need to model forgiving one another. And so we're going to have ample opportunities to forgive, right? Jesus said, forgive one another, right? 7 times 70. So do the math, right? 7 times 70 is 490. Okay, 491 times, you're out, right?
Done.
Done, right? No.
I've actually done that before. I'm like, wait, so there is a limit. Okay.
So 491 times happened probably in the first week of marriage. But he's saying, just keep on doing it. Well, here's the deal. If we're going to be like Jesus, it means we can't be like Jesus without forgiving. But you can't forgive somebody unless you've been hurt. So how about this thought right here? God allows you and God allows me in life to be hurt so that we can in turn become like Jesus and forgive. So when we hurt, what we're often doing is we're wanting to take vengeance. We're wanting to make someone pay. We're frustrated. But what if we could just realize that, wow, you know what, I'm hurting. Here's an opportunity for me to show my spouse the love of Jesus and to forgive unconditionally. Okay, folks. Well, we thank you for listening to us. We genuinely hope that this has been helpful. We're doing this for you and for us. You go, well, why is it for you? Because it helps my wife and I to remember where we've come from. Keeps us strong. It keeps us healthy to give our life away. It helps us to get out of ourselves, to be able to come and spend some time with you. And so anyway, I'm going to go through and start reading some of the stuff. If you have any questions, I want to encourage you to throw those up now. We're happy to sit on for about 20 minutes or so and take some stuff. Animal, you two are sweet. Happy for you both. Well, thank you very much. She is a sweetie right here. Tim, I see you jumped in. What's up, bro?
I just wanted to say that there's some questions in the private chat. If you wanted to start, there's about 4 or 5 of them in there. Either you can check them out or I can read them off or whatever. So as more questions,
Tim, why don't you have a handle on some stuff? Talk to it. You probably had a little bit of time to process. Everybody say hi to Tim, our executive producer.
Greetings, everybody.
Take some questions, Tim, and just ask them for us, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Scott said, what is your advice on finding a godly partner? I'm busy with college, and so currently it's not the top of my priority list. But when the time comes, how will I know, and where should I look?
That's a really good question, right? Well, I honestly feel my heart goes out to young people today. I think it's harder than ever. I mean, yes, it's easier than ever, I guess, for the online stuff, but even that, I can't even imagine. I don't have any paradigm for that, but I think just really being intentional about where you do spend your time. I don't think, going to the bars, you're probably not going to find a godly wife there. So really being intentional, finding that godly community and a church body, surrounding yourself with people that know you well, good mentors that can really help you when you do start dating. That was very helpful for Bobby and I when we were dating, just to have someone bounce those questions off of, because it's hard when you're young and you're trying to find that. But really putting yourself in the settings that other godly people will most likely be is obviously the number one thing I can think of at the moment.
And I remember years ago, and I'm not saying you have to go with these 2 questions at all, but what I admired is this young lady identified 2 questions that she would ask any guy that she was going to go on a date with. And it was just her way of trying to filter out who she's willing to go on a date with. So she was asked to go on a date. She said, well, I got 2 questions for you. The first is this. If you could talk about any subject in the world, what subject matter would you want to talk about the most? And she said, if he didn't reply by saying Jesus, then we wouldn't get to the next question. And then, so obviously
she had some high standards.
Right? And then, if you had, I forget the second question at the moment. Do you remember it?
I don't.
It was something
Basically
similar, right?
sharing the gospel. Like,
Yes,
if you
sharing the gospel.
like if you were in a room if
Of
you had
50 people.
50 people, what would you say?
Yeah,
And if
what
he-
would you say? That's
yeah,
right.
And if he didn't say
The gospel.
the gospel, then she was like, it's dead in the water. We're going nowhere. So, basically that's like goals right there, right? So yeah.
But hey, honestly, look, she wanted to know that somebody was passionate about Christ and felt that the most urgent thing that the world needed to know was that Christ died on the cross. So that was her filter. For you might just kind of come up with something if you're single and you're listening, what am I looking for in a person? Know what you are looking for. When I was in seminary, Prof. Hendricks used to tell us, the great late Prof. Hendricks, he'd say, the secret to concentration is elimination. So you want to concentrate what it is that you're looking for so that you can eliminate, right? So obviously when it comes to the scriptures, one thing is you're looking to be equally yoked in a relationship, right? You want somebody that loves Jesus. Tommy Nelson, he talked about this whole idea, though, you can be equally yoked, but in your beliefs, but you could have different levels of passion that could be way off. So you want your spiritual interest to be very similar as well. So he talked about like running a race, and here you are, you're running this race, and you have the baton in your hand, but you're just blowing past everybody. Well, eventually you're going to come in the run, and somebody's going to come alongside you, and they're going to be running at the same pace. And just look at them and say, hey, you want to run together, and hand the baton off. So I think looking for people that have, you want to have some similar interests because you don't want it to be complete resistance, right? So it's okay to have different likes and stuff, but you're asking questions like, do we have things in common? How do we communicate? What kind of unprocessed pain does this person have? What kind of unprocessed pain do I have? So while you're single, you're using this time to get as healthy as possible. You want to deal with trauma. You want to learn how to have self-control. You want to learn how to be as domesticated as possible. And so you're growing so that you can be prepared to be a healthy offering to the person you're going to marry someday. I think that I was unhealthy in so many ways. My Heather met me when I was 6 months sober. I had so much to grow in, and we built a rocky foundation, and we're still trying to smooth things out because of just how jaded my choices were as a kid. So anyway, I would say that would be the big thing. Just know what you're looking for and go after it in that kind of way. And it's been said before, the three most important decisions you're ever going to make in your life is, first, who's going to be your master? Second, who's going to be your mate? And third, what's your life mission? Look, when you know who your master is, you're off to a great start. Then pray for your master, the Lord, to guide you to the right mate. And then what is your mission? And I have found when I feel most fulfilled in life is when I feel good about my relationship with God and I'm not having doubts or whatever, like I had a hard season that I went through, when my marriage feels good, and when I have a sense of mission. When I look most empty, and Heather see me there, is when I've been in a season of doubt and my relationship, my master's off, when our marriage has been in a funk, and when I don't have a real sense of mission. That's depression.
Mm-hmm.
That's depression.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So we got a few more. So we just want to say thank you for the super chat from Brian. And Brian asks, what church do you pastor at currently? And while you're getting ready to answer that question, I'm going to go ahead and throw up and remind everybody we're running a special on this sweatshirt tonight. Our Credible Answers to Curious Questions sweatshirt. So I'll go ahead and throw that on the screen. Just there we go. It's the website where you can find that at. And I got the link that I'll go ahead and put in the chat if anyone wants to jump over there. And so here we go. So as we answer that question, oh, I lost you guys. There we go. So what is your current post as a pastor?
Well, I'm not a pastor at this time. I've served for 14 years as a lead pastor of a church that I started, and I resigned about a year and a half ago, and just wanted to pull away from the pastorate. It was just time for me to shift into a new season of life. And so right now I do host a radio program called Pastor's Perspective. It's a call-in radio program. People call up, ask questions, and we're answering Bible questions, theology, philosophy, apologetics, practical everyday questions. And then I'm doing the 1 Minute Apologist, but right now, we're at a place because I went from the pastorate position, which allowed us to have kind of our full-time needs taken care of. The radio takes care of about half of our needs, but we've always done 1 Minute Apologist for free. So we've given over 1,000 videos away for free. And so right now we're in a position where I'm hoping that I don't have to go and get another job. And so we're asking people to jump aboard and consider helping us to do this kind of a thing full time with 1 Minute Apologists. And so we have a Patreon page, and that's the goal. So right now we are running out of funds quick on the 1 Minute Apologist side. It's not sustainable long term unless we get some supporters. And so we're just hoping that people will pray and jump on our Patreon team. And I think, Tim, maybe you can mention a little bit about what that looks like before we go to the next question.
Sure. So in addition to helping 1 Minute Apologist by purchasing sweatshirts and t-shirts and stuff like that, that does help us out. You can join our Patreon. The link is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It's also in the description. And there's the base level is you can jump in at $4. You get a free book. There's another break at $10. Again, there's some more information that you get at $10. And then at the $50 mark, there's some really great just benefits that we're offering at our Patreon. You can also donate or join our website at oneminuteapologist.com, or click on donate in the upper right hand corner, or you can click on join in the middle of the screen. All of those ways will help us to continue to do what we do. So
thanks, Tim. Mm-hmm. Hey, Tim, I know that I see a question from Hill Slidell, if I pronounced that correctly, about addiction. And I'm just going to have Heather address that real quick because I think that would be something if there's a lot of hurt going on. But Hill Slidell said, just want to know how your wife was able to deal with your addiction, because it's really hard for me to have patience with people with mental health problems because I don't have that problem. Appreciate the honesty there. And for those that might be wondering, you can listen to Confessions of an Alcoholic Apologist, Part 1 with David Wood, and then Part 2 with my wife on YouTube, where I talked about a relapse I had after almost 23 years without drinking. And we talked about what that looked like and why and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, how I dealt with it, it's addiction and really life in general it's not linear, right? So it's not like, oh, here we go. There's no formula on how I dealt with it, because addiction, it's its own animal. And so my first advice would be to really start reading and understanding what addiction is and what that looks like, because even though Bobby's completely sober now, he still has that addict brain. And people that have addict brains, they think differently, they act differently, they approach life really differently. And I'm with you. I don't know the name here, but I'm with you. I have issues, but I don't have that issue. I'm not an addictive type personality. So I really had to educate myself on what addiction looks like. And then also when you're dealing with someone, let's say if they're actively in their addiction and they're acting out, whatever it may be, I would say that you need to get some help. You need to probably have someone in your life that can help walk you through what you need to do to protect yourself, to best help your spouse. And and to set boundaries. That was another thing I was going to say. I do think especially if they're acting out, you really do need to have some good boundaries. Like, what are your non-negotiables here? And I won't get too much into hours, but like when Bobby did relapse for 3 days there, I did have to have some strong boundaries, because when they're in that brain, they're not in rational brain, and you're the one dealing with it. So you have to really ask God to help you and help you endure that suffering we were just talking about, and to give you wisdom, and then to set some appropriate boundaries until they choose to, start getting the help or going to meetings or whatever you guys decide on those boundaries are. But those are a few things. Study, figure out what it is, set some appropriate boundaries, find a godly person, a pastor, a mentor, a counselor to help you walk through how you can love them the best in that.
Yeah. And for me, when it is tough, I can understand why, it's hard sometimes to understand things we don't struggle with. A lot of times an addict, they're not trying to hurt people. They just don't always cope the best. They just feel pressure really easy. They think in escape terms, and boundaries can be really important. I do think what Heather said about validating, though, that I can't imagine what it would be like to struggle with drinking. And when I had a relapse, I had some I thought were dear friends. There wasn't that comfort that was there. Just more operating from a place of judgment and all boundaries and no grace. And that'll crush the addict around you. This Is Us. But I've been telling Heather, watching This Is Us, they capture the alcoholic and addiction so well. When somebody feels unworthy and worthless, then their temptation is to drink and self-destruct. And I don't understand that, right? And so, like, you had Justin Hartley on a recent episode of This Is Us, and he was told basically, he's just a wrecking ball. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't relapse in the episode, but what he did do is he picked a fight and allowed somebody to punch him. And I told Heather, I said, he's self-destructing. Mm. He doesn't feel worthy. And so when somebody's an alcoholic or an addict, they have tremendous worth issues. And it's important to show grace and love and to that person by validating, at the same token, having proper boundaries, because they can take advantage of you with no boundaries. But if you're all boundary and no love and no grace, they'll run away from you. And that's honestly the reason I resigned from the church. I did after my relapse. They wanted me to stay. I wasn't loved well by the leadership, and I left. I could have stayed, but the lack of gospel grace was like, I'm out of here. I didn't feel safe there any longer. And you know what? That's what people will do. So you got to have both of that, truth and grace.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's keep rolling. We have a few more minutes here. I'll throw you a really easy one, guys. So Rick asked, what's a good way to broach the topic of sex and godliness early in a dating relationship without being really awkward? So because I'm going to make awkward faces, I'm just going to jump off and let you guys answer that question. I'll still be here in the background. You just won't see me as you answer that, just so my face isn't picture red.
I honestly was this guy. I had a real promiscuous past. Heather didn't. And we ended up waiting by God's grace in those 2 years before we got married for our wedding night, which was something to this day I'm so thankful for. And I would say at the right time, you want to be able to have conversations about this. And so, learning about what it means to be intimate and sexuality. And by the way, Tim, was this from somebody that wasn't married?
I believe so. Yes, I believe they're not married.
I would say attend a family life conference if you're in the United States. They have some stuff for pre-engaged people,
or for engaged people,
or for engaged people.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good catch. But there are things as it relates to discussions if you're not married that you want to be able to have. And so, for example, like, what are you comfortable with? I mean, like, one great way to get frustrated is to get married and you have this fantasy of what marriage is going to look like, and she has other set of expectations. Are you comfortable with different positions? Right? That's embarrassing, right?
Here we go.
Right now you're the blushers there.
Here, I think we just need to do a whole nother live on intimacy, because there is so much to talk about.
But everybody listening, it's true. Like if he's going in thinking, well, wow, we're going to be doing this and that and this, and she's thinking, well, we're only going to do this, you're going to have problems from the get-go. So that's why we have to kind of get a sense of where's our comfort level going to be on this. But you know what? Heather and I will do an episode on this if you're interested. talked about this a lot in the past, and talked to our church about this, because look, the culture is going to talk about sex. Why not look at what the Bible has to say about a healthy picture of sexuality, right?
Well, because sex is God's gift to marriage, and
Absolutely.
God designed sex, and we live in this world where we have let the world totally paint that picture.
Exactly.
And we need to take that back. And as Christians, we don't need to be taboo about it. I mean, we need to be open about it in a godly, sanctified way, but sex is God's idea. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the world's idea. So as Christians, we need to be putting that out there. So I think maybe doing a whole live around intimacy could be good.
Yeah. Song of Solomon. We can do Song of Solomon.
Yeah. That's great. All right. I think you'd addressed this, but how did you guys meet? Just initially give us the, first laid eyes on each other story real quick. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, we met on Tinder 25 years ago, and no. They didn't have that, right? We were I was on a blind date. I wasn't a good blind date dude. I like.
He was on a blind date with someone else.
Someone else, yeah. I like to know what I was getting myself into, right? I didn't do blind dates, but this particular night I went on a blind date, and I was like, oh man, why did I go on this blind date? I wasn't connecting, but we went to pick Heather up at her house to get her and her boyfriend, and I thought, man, I don't want to be on this blind date. I want to be on a date with her, but she had a boyfriend, so I couldn't really do a whole lot there. But we were just connecting, talking about both recently being saved. I met her in her parents' room, 5223 Nellbrook Drive in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
They don't live there anymore, so
yeah,
it's
they don't live there anymore. But it was in that family room, and she ended up breaking up with her boyfriend about a month later, and we started dating. And I was living in Arkansas. I moved from Southern Cal out to Arkansas to get clean, just to stay away, to change my people, places, and playthings, and just needed a change of environment. And I met Heather, and the rest was history. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Let's keep going here. So,
how many questions do we have? And because we can start doing lightning round answers.
Yeah, we got about three left. So let's do lightning round here. Gilden Nelson says, how do you deal with children?
Hey, that's Gideon Nelson.
Gideon.
Well, Gideon is.
This is the Gideon, right?
The Gideon Nelson.
This is the Gideon.
This is really lightning round. I'll let you deal with that one.
How do you deal with children who date? Well, I take a belt and I spank anybody who wants to take my daughter out on a date the first time.
Oh God!
No.
I love that, Gideon. That's great.
We love Gideon. Hey, Gideon is our daughter's longtime boyfriend, and we love him like crazy. And our Gideon and my daughter are deeply.
They are high school sweethearts.
They are high school sweethearts, but they have a very special relationship. And the truth of the matter is Heather and I couldn't ask for just a sharper, more godly young man than Gideon. We love you, buddy. How do you deal with children who date? Well, you know how we deal with children who date.
You have to get grilled by the Reverend.
Yeah. He called me up when he was 15, and he was calling me Reverend on the phone. I'm like, bro, I don't go by Reverend. Like, that's a little bit too formal for me. Now he'll say dude and bro, and that feels a little bit better. But he was scared to death when he first called up and asked. But you want to know something special about Gideon? Is he called up and he asked if he could have permission to take my daughter on a date, our daughter, and we said sure. Then he asked, what are our boundaries? He wanted to know what my boundaries were as her father, and I shared with him what those boundaries were. And I said, look, I in all honesty, I said, it's best if you don't French kiss, because I know if you do, right? And I know it sounds crazy, but I said, you're going to have a hard time not lusting once you start going down that road. And Gideon be the first to, but then he comes and he goes, man, Bobby, those boundaries you set up, those are challenging. And I laughed at him. I said, that's good that you're attracted to her. Keep it up. And you know what?
Reason.
Within reason. But we don't, we're not legalistic with the kids. They love each other. They have passion. They're excited for each other. We just want to encourage them to stay as pure as they possibly can. And, I think it's important.
That kind of goes back to the other guy talking. When you're in a relationship, it's important that you do talk about intimacy and sexual desires and that sort of thing, so that you can have appropriate boundaries,
Yeah.
and be on the same page. What are our boundaries here in this dating relationship, and what does that look like? So,
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so we're not going to get to all the questions. I apologize. There's some really good ones here, but I'm afraid for time's sake, Humbled Clay and Angie to Love. Your questions are great, but we're going to keep doing sessions like this with Bobby and Heather as they're going to talk, and they'll cover some of those. So subscribe to the channel and stay tuned to what's going on. So one last quick question from I think it's Diego and Maria. And they ask, any good resources for small groups or to help counsel couples? So what resources would you suggest for people?
Well,
you're the resource guru here.
Well, my favorite book on marriage for today is Timothy Keller's The Meaning of Marriage. I just think Keller comes at things in a great way. Philosophically, he'll use science, he'll use culture, he'll use history, but first and foremost, he uses the word. But he can show how, but he brings this sociological awareness and psychological awareness and the recent findings and stuff, and he shows good data, and he just does such a great job of handling scripture and helping you to understand the meaning of it. Well, at the same token, really does a wonderful job helping us to understand the threats that our marriages are up against. So if you were to say, Bobby, what's one resource that you would do for reading a book? I'd say that. And I'd say another, just to put a shout out to our good friends, Don and Sally Meredith and Roland and Tammy Martinez, their To Becoming One study. It's a great study just about how do you grow in oneness. And there's a small group study guide. And not only that, Roland and Tammy, they speak Spanish. So if you're in Latin America or whatever, they'll come and do a conference for you. And they're just a great resource. They're accessible. And so check out christianfamilylife.org or christianfamilylife.com. Roland and Tammy Martinez.
I think it's .org, yeah.
.org. Okay, yeah, check that out, and you can get those resources there.
Sweet. Well, Bobby and Heather, thank you so much for all of the wonderful wisdom that you shared with us tonight. One last plug. We got a sale on this incredible sweatshirt with the Credible Answers to Curious Questions logo. So you can go ahead. The link is in the chat, and it's right there at the top of the screen. So you guys want to close us out?
Should I tell? Yeah, I do. I just wanted to mention it about tomorrow night. Tomorrow, I will be doing a YouTube live. And I'll be talking, it'll be more philosophy of religion, where I'll be talking about Charles Darwin's naturalistic explanation of morality. So if you're interested, last week I talked about the problem of guilt and gave out a moral argument. Tomorrow I'll be looking at how it is that Charles Darwin, in his Descent of Man that was published a decade after Origin of the Species in 1859, how it is that he talks about moral sense and deals with things like guilt. And I think it'll be an interesting conversation for any of you that are interested in that kind of subject matter as well. And we'll be back. My wife is going to be a frequent guest. We want to talk about practical things like marriage, because here's the deal. At the end of the day, our marriages are meant to be an apologetic. We're meant to have missionary marriages. People are meant to see that our marriages display the gospel. And so when we're doing marriage discussions, we're trying to help marriages give an apologetic for the defensibility of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? Really quick, I just thought about something. When I was on last time, Bobby had put up my, or Tim, you did, I think. You put up my Instagram handle. And I had like 3 people private message me. So if you're listening and it was you, could you do it again? Because I went to respond and it went away. And I don't know where it went. I tried to get my daughter on there to help me find it. So whoever you 3 lovely people were, Tim, if you wouldn't mind putting it back up there, just so I can, respond, because I wasn't ghosting you. I promise. I was actually answering your questions and then I couldn't find it. So anyway, so it was around health and wellness. So
And a shout out to Brian. We just saw that you're going to be supporting our channel.
Yay.
And it just means so much, honestly.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And anyway, hey, Lord bless everybody who listened today. Bless them with strength and courage and fill them with your spirit and help them to have amazing marriages. And those who are single, help them just to wait patiently and find the right person. And I pray for those that know couples that are struggling, that you just use this resource to help just to spread encouragement to people. We love you. We praise you in Christ's name. Amen. And Tim, special thank you to you, my friend.
I appreciate being on. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bless you all.